We are talking about Nexus specifically for regional service managers. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Sarah Kendall. I am your Mission Rock operations trainer. So I host trainings for Nexus, for Yardi, for really whatever else crosses my path. And I'm really excited to talk about Nexus as our overall program for invoices and how your specific roles relating to capital expenditures fits into that Nexus system to make everybody's lives easier. We will be talking about all kinds of good information today. So we'll discuss the different roles in Nexus, which users are actually active in the system. We'll talk about Mission Rock's password policy and delegations. And then we'll dive into the CapEx part of today's webinar. We'll talk about which capital expenditures actually belong in Nexus. There are still a few types of invoices, specifically draws, that will not be operating through Nexus. For those that are in Nexus, we'll talk about the workflow to get that completed, your specific approver role as a regional service manager. So what tasks do you need to complete in the system? And we'll wrap up with different methods of reporting and research that could prove helpful to you and some tips and tricks on how to make this successful going forward. So why do we use Nexus? What is it? Nexus Payables is a full purchase order to payment system. It allows all of our team members to have viewable access in real time to see all of our purchase orders and invoices for each community. It allows Mission Rock's approval policies to be followed. It gets our vendors paid faster and correctly. It helps prevent overpayment to vendors because all users are assigned for specific roles. There's a handful of people in Nexus, as we'll talk about up here next. And having that workflow, having those specific approval policies really helps with accuracy, it prevents misuse, and it's in line with Mission Rock's statement of being accountable and transparent. Last but not least, Nexus Payables offers us a lot of reporting features. It integrates with Yardi on a daily basis, so it's constantly pulling budget information that we can use for really robust reporting. And it's paperless because paper's not so much fun all the time. I mentioned that there's a lot of different people working in Nexus. Who are those people? Well, we have two different sets of roles within Nexus. We have those that are on site and those that are at the corporate level. Now, I want you to keep in mind, your service managers have a completely different experience in Nexus than you do. You guys have very separate roles. Your service managers are purchase order coders, so they will actually create purchase orders for items, example for turns, for HD supply orders, for calling vendors for water extractions, things like that. Your service managers will create a purchase order for that. That will later be the basis for linking the invoice to it. That's not what you're doing. We'll get to you. Assistant managers on site are also involved in Nexus. Many of them have a PO coder role. That's the official title. I say it because it's really fun to say. They can also create purchase orders, but then they also process invoices. This is important to mention because they will be seeing some of your CapEx invoices. It's important when you're communicating with teams, having that open line of communication with anyone who would process the invoice is going to be important for you. Property managers have one of two roles. They're either just an approver, so they've got veto power essentially over all purchase orders and invoices processed through their community. Or if they don't have an assistant manager, if they're on a smaller community, they combine all roles. So they can make purchase orders, they can process invoices, they approve and reject stuff. They're just a one-man show. On the corporate side, we've got 6 more key roles. Regional managers are active in Nexus. Their official title is Approver 2. They don't have to approve tons and tons of stuff, but for example, invoices over $5,000 or capital expense invoices, petty cash, things like that. Kay, Meredith, and Pat are also in Nexus. Very rarely will any items make it up to them for approval. Hey, there's you. You have a regional service manager role. You are also a approver, meaning you don't have to worry about creating or coding invoices or allocating them to GLs or anything like that. Your on-site team will take care of that. But you will see the invoice and you will be able to approve or reject it at that point. Tara and Rena are also active in Nexus. They have the RSM CapEx role. So these are your capital expenditure approvers that are within Mission Rock. This way, our capital invoices are processed through Nexus. Everybody that needs to can see them, and Tara and Rena can just grab it from Nexus, make that construction management fee invoice, and get it sent straight back to the property. 100% of invoices get approved by the property accountant before it is paid. And last but not least, we've got administrators. These are team members within Mission Rock who have administrator access in Nexus. They will create new users, they will troubleshoot the system, they will perform system updates, a little bit of everything. So as you can see, there's a lot of people working in Nexus and everyone's working together in it. But because it's paperless, it ultimately saves us so much time. And because we have specific workflows and roles set up like this, it allows us to make sure that everyone who needs to is in the loop with the communication for that invoice. All right, let's go ahead and actually get into Nexus. One quick note before we do that, you have to use Internet Explorer. You just gotta. One day you will not use Internet Explorer. You'll jump to Firefox or Chrome or something along those lines. And you'll be like, I don't know what Sarah was talking about. Obviously, this works perfectly fine within Internet Explorer. And then halfway through whatever it is you're doing, you'll notice that the buttons stop working. You all of a sudden lose the ability to view invoices or things like that. Just remember in that moment, remember I told you so. No, I'm just kidding. Just make sure you get it set up for Internet Explorer. Those setup options include making sure that Nexus runs in compatibility mode, that Nexus is a trusted site, and that pop-ups are not blocked. You do have an accompanying guide to this training, and that actually walks step by step through those settings in Internet Explorer if you need to double check them. You will receive your username and password for Nexus after this course. You'll be able to email Jessie Erdman. I'll give you her information later, and she'll get that set up for you. Every time you log into Nexus, you'll notice I logged in on one screen, that one, and the actual window opened in another screen. The entirety of Nexus is a pop-up window. Now, the very first time you log into Nexus, you have to stop and set up your profile. However, there are some handy features in this profile setup process that you can go back to and make changes to and can really customize to your needs. So let's go ahead and do that first before we poke around the system. Let's go up to the Administration tab at the top of our screen in Nexus. We'll select My Settings. And if you're in the mood for a little light reading, you can read an overview that tells you what every tab is, or you can just go through the tabs, really whatever floats your boat. First up is user information. The first time you log in, you will be prompted to change your password. And yes, you do have to set up all 6 security questions and answers. It is of the utmost importance that you verify your email address in here is correct. It should be your Mission Rock email, because Nexus has amazing email notification capabilities, and you won't be able to participate in that if your email's not right. Now, the catch-22 here, you can't change it, but if it's wrong, you just submit a help desk ticket, and the lovely Nexus administrators will get you taken care of. If you made any changes here, we're just going to click Save and keep moving forward. Under the Settings tab, you can choose if you have let's say one property that is doing a ton of renovations and you have so many projects going on for them, you can select that property to appear first whenever you first log in. Or you can just leave it blank as a group to see everything. This default dashboard, I would recommend that you set it to invoices to approve. This is going to be the key thing you're doing in Nexus anyways. And what that does is it saves you a whole 5 seconds of your day. But I mean, honestly, every little bit counts, right? When you log into Nexus, having this default dashboard set, it'll be the first thing that opens when you log in. Since we made changes, we're going to click Save and keep moving forward. Display, leave that guy alone unless you're hooking up to multiple monitors at once. You guys are always on the go. So if you end up needing to change it, just let me know. Otherwise, leave it alone. Email notification. You will have items come through Nexus pretty regularly for your properties that, kind of have a lot going on. Instead of having to log into Nexus off and on throughout the day, you can set up email notifications so that Nexus will tell you when you need to jump in the system. Remember, you're just going to be approving invoices here. So you can go through, select which email alerts you would like. This is also reflected in the guide you have as to our recommended email settings. That's usually what you see here. So if something requires your approval, you'll get an email on your phone or inbox or what have you. You'll be able to jump into Nexus and get that taken care of. For email frequency, these frequency-based alerts, these call to action here, you do have to set when you want to get them. Do you want them every hour on the hour? Sure, if you really like emails. Do you want maybe just one in the morning before you wake up, before you jump in the system and start your day? You'll get one summary email saying, hey, you've got invoices to approve. Get into Nexus, and then you can just do that real fast. You also have mobile settings. That's going to be our next tab. Please, 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 please set this up. Y'all are on the go so much. The email notifications are important, but the mobile settings are just as important. David Roy has requested that everyone get this set up, and here's why. You will be able, once activated, to log into Nexus from your phone, from your tablet, from what have you, and be able to approve invoices right there on the go. It's pretty nifty. In order to get this mobile setting set up, say that 10 times, you do have to do 2 things. You need to request authorization for this function. Again, you'll email Jessie Erdman, which is JERDMAN at missionrockres.com. She will need your phone number and your desired mobile PIN. Just 4-digit of whatever you want. What that does is she will register you as an authorized user for mobile Nexus, and you'll be good to go. We'll talk about that again. I'll get you a reminder later. Okay, everyone has specific roles in Nexus, right? And within those roles, you have very specific job duties. Because of that, we can never, ever, ever, ever share our passwords for Nexus. If we do so, we are violating, first off, Mission Rock's policies and procedures, second off, the technology policy, whatnot that Mission Rock has, and third, the integrity of the Nexus system. So moral of the story, don't do it. So what if you're going on vacation? You've got all these invoices coming to you for approval. You can't just leave them and get your, vendors unhappy and not paid, and doesn't go over very well. So you will instead set up a delegation, which allows someone else to have access to your role in Nexus. Your delegations always go 1 level up. So if you were to come to this tab, User Delegation, select Add a Delegation, go figure. You'll pick the beginning and ending date. Let's say we're going to Bahamas for a week. Yeah, buddy. That sounds good, right? You'll select who to delegate to. You will have pretty limited options here. It's going to David Roy, going to your VP of Property Services. You'll select which communities you want to be assigned to them and click Save. This stops you from having to share your password. Because now, during this time frame, when David Roy logs into Nexus, he will see his role and he will see any roles delegated to him. Keep in mind, we always have to put an end date. No, you can't just send it all to David Roy indefinitely. Not going to go over so well, but it is a fantastic tool to keep in mind. Okay? We've now gone through the profile setup process. As you noted, there's a few great settings you might come back and change later. Which property you want to see first, any specific email notifications you're getting, and if you're going on vacation, user delegation. Just to recap on the delegation, a few more notes here that I want to run over. Make sure we're all on the same page, right? Delegation avoids the sharing of passwords. We cannot share passwords for Nexus. I know I'm saying it over and over again, but you'd rather hear it from me than HR, right? Like, I'm just saying. Now, you can set up delegations. However, Nexus administrators also can. So if you get the bird flu and you're out sick for 3 weeks, it's okay. David Roy can request that forced delegation to be set up by a Nexus admin, just if you're not available to jump in and do it yourself. As I mentioned, all delegations have a set end date and they go up to the next level. So for example, if a property manager were to go on vacation for weeks, they would delegate to their regional manager. You would delegate again, David Roy. And last but not least, when a user receives that delegated role, they have two options. So they can work in their role and profile, and they can also work in yours, leaving no invoice behind. I really think that should be Nexus slogan right there. I think I just coined something, you guys. Okay, let's talk about what belongs in Nexus and what does not belong in Nexus. In other words, business plan versus operations. Business plan, CapEx, and draws. Those are not processed through Nexus. You will keep that on your normal path. They will remain outside of the Nexus system for now. Only operations capital expenditures are processed through Nexus. These vendors will be sending their invoices straight to Nexus, and they are expected to include their vendor ID and the property number on the invoice. Here's what happens. They send it to Nexus. Nexus scans and uploads the invoice, sends it to our on-site team. And that's where we will get into our CapEx workflow. However, properties do process 3 types of capital expenditure invoices. So I want to stop and go through those here once we talk about the workflow. Okay. So for these operations capital expenditure invoices, like I mentioned, the vendor will send it to Nexus, or vendors also have an option to upload it straight into the Nexus system using what's called Vendor Connect. If you want more information about that, it's detailed on some of the help manuals within Nexus. Once uploaded, it goes on site, goes to our team members at our communities. It will be processed by either the assistant or the property manager, remember, whoever has that invoice processing role. And they have to physically mark it as a capital expenditure for you. Once they do so, it triggers 3 layers of approval. It triggers their regional manager to approve it, you to approve it, and Terrarena to approve it. Once all that's said and done, it will go to the accountant who will give the final okay and send it to the accounts payable team to get processed. Get your vendor paid, happy pappy, good stuff. Now I mentioned that your on-site teams have to decide that it's regional service manager CapEx invoice. Now I do want to kind of zoom out for a minute. I want to show you what I actually train our on-site teams for, because I also complete all of their training for Nexus. So just so that you have the perspective of what process do they go through to make that decision, right? They're processing 3 types of capital expenditure invoices. So first one, invoices that are coded to our GLs that start with those 150 and 920 accounts. All of those get processed a different way for our on-site teams. However, they are not always your expenses. They're not always a project managed by regional service managers. Yours are separate. You guys generally, again, coordinate CapEx projects over $2,500, and Mission Rock collects the construction management fee on these. The way that teams process it is they will use a pay-by field in Nexus. We'll see what that looks like here in a minute. So they will mark that pay-by field, again, only when the invoice is for a project over $2,500 that is overseen by an RSM, regardless of the GL. How do they know that? That comes to the communication between you and the on-site teams. Are unit upgrades within your purview? Is that one of your projects? Are we completely zero-scaping a property? That's one of your projects. How do they know? You tell them. Last but not least, they also see construction management fees. These get invoiced to the property. The property still processes it a different way, but it doesn't have to go to you. It goes to one specific GL account. So all 3 of these types of invoices are coming to the on-site teams. They fall outside of the normal purchase order invoice workflow. How they get to you is going to be this way. Here's the third one down here, just to summarize. You're the RSM overseeing CapEx project. They do not have a purchase order, but they pick a pay-by field, and that's what triggers your approval to be involved in it. These other types, the 150 and 920 GLs that aren't yours, CapEx management fees, those get processed differently, but because they don't have a pay-by field, you are not involved in the approval process. All right, before I talk about your role in here, one last thing. You will coordinate projects that are, again, typically over $2,500. Is the single invoice for $2,500? No. So that's why that communication is so important. It is so essential. Because a property manager could get 5 invoices for $500, and any one of those might not stand out as being your project unless they know that altogether it is. Communication, it's a beautiful thing. Okay, your approval role in Nexus. There's a couple key things to remember. I want to actually jump to Nexus and take a look at what this looks like before we talk about some of the requirements for approval versus rejection. Okay, we've set up our profile. Let me just run through a couple of other navigational tips in the system. Yeah, at the top of the screen here, a lot like Yardi, you've got different tabs, and within those, you've got subtabs. I'm going to be honest. Nexus has so many options available. Your specific job duties in Nexus do not require you to use most of them. I'm really zooming in and focusing on what you'll be doing in Nexus. If you would like to learn about all the extra features and other things that Nexus has to offer, maybe what your on-site teams are doing, you are more than welcome to join some of our other Nexus trainings and/or use this help button on the right side of your screen in Nexus to pull up a bunch of Nexus manuals. What? Good stuff. These are not Mission Rock specific, so you might see a couple features that we're not currently using, but these are super helpful step-by-step manuals that Nexus has. Again, found through the help button, upper right-hand corner of your screen. This here is your home screen, your dashboard. You can always get back to it by clicking home or the obnoxiously large Nexus Payables logo. And just below that, you've got your property information. Which property are you currently viewing? It's important to take a look at this, because you might get that email like, hey, you've got an invoice to approve. And you log in and you're like, no, I don't. Did you check all your properties? How will you know that? Again, you'll see which property you're currently viewing on the right, and then you'll have this drop down in the middle to choose between your communities. Let's say I want to jump to Cordova Village. I want to click go. It'll load that property's current information. Or I could even pick if I want to see my group of properties or all properties assigned to me. In that case, it will combine that information and show it on the screen for you. But I want to zoom down to this one, so let me get back there. Okay. Below that, we have our accounting details. This shows which accounting month we're in. Right now, April. If you'd like a handy schedule for each community, you could click that and see when we transition to the next accounting month. Just in case, now you know. You have summary statistics. This section is your quick link to both FYI items and to-do items. Honestly, your one to-do link here, the one that you should always be focused on is this, invoices to approve. Right now it looks like we have 3. And to view those 3, I'm just going to click on the invoices to approve link, and it will display them at the bottom. The rest of these categories, these options, really just an FYI. The properties will be responsible for these items. You won't be involved in them. All you're having to do is approve or reject, and that all comes from this link. So let's get to one of those items. We see here we have 3 invoices to approve. Looks like I can see the date, the property, the invoice number, the dollar amount, the due date, all the good stuff. So let's just click on one of these links here. Click on Hyatt Electric. What that does is open up a side-by-side screen. On the left-hand side, you will see the actual invoice from the vendor. If it's multiple pages, you can scroll through, see all the pages. I'm in Magical Training Land. I've got a fake invoice, so we're going to ignore that. Make the right side of the screen a little bigger. On the right-hand side, this is where you'll see what the property has done. How are we coding this invoice? How are we explaining it? How are we paying for it from our budget? In the guide that I sent you, that you've got access to, that RSM Nexus user guide, I have a general checklist to go through. So first up, is the actual invoice displaying? If not, reject it. We're not going to pay something we can't see. It will always be a PDF. It will always appear on the left-hand side of the screen, and we have to have it. And then we'll go down everything on the right. Is the correct vendor selected? You know, we've got a lot of vendors in Compliance Depot. Let's make sure we pick the right one before we send them an $8,500 check, right? On the right, you'll see the original timestamp. Who worked on this invoice and when? What is the invoice number, the due date, the total, all the good stuff? This is that pay by field I mentioned. The team had to specifically select this as RSM CapEx in order to get your eyes on it. You'll also note that there's no purchase orders. Yes, Nexus is a purchase order system. Our teams will do like 99% of their work via purchase orders. However, y'all are the exception. Capital invoices are absolutely an exception to that. You should never see anything here. Associated POs should always say none. So the top half of our screen looks right. Let's move down to our line items. This is where we have coded or explained or categorized what this invoice is for. So it looks like we replaced 20 exterior building lights. We have coded it to this specific GL account. Is that correct? Is the description correct? Does all of this match what you had discussed with the vendor, right, and what the vendor actually invoiced? Are we over budget? I mentioned that Nexus pulls Yardy's budget information. It's pretty cool. It'll show us that and also allow us to enter over budget notes. Everything below that is really just a history log. What has happened with this invoice? When was it uploaded by Nexus? When was it sent to the team? When did this team send it to us? When did we send it back? All kinds of good stuff. You'll also note you can't change anything here. This is part of the accountability and transparency of Nexus. So if something is wrong, you have to reject it. We'll do that next though. This one's beautiful. So we're just going to click approve at the very top of our screen. This invoice is now still pending approval, because remember, it takes a lot of approval for a capital invoice to get paid. But you're part of it. It's approved. You're good to go. You know that because you no longer have any other options up here at the top of the screen to approve or reject or what have you. That's it. Let's go back to your dashboard here. Let's do one more that we're going to approve. So again, we'll go to invoices to approve. This is my to-do line item. Gotta keep it clear. Gotta get those vendors paid. The bottom of the screen will see what those invoices are. Let's click the vendor name to open it up. Actual invoice appears on the left. If it does not, reject it. No bueno. On the right, we'll make sure that everything is listed correctly. Looks like this one, yep, it's marked for us. Great, that's why we're seeing it. There's no PO, great. We've got a couple line items. Looks like they charged us $1,750 for our clubhouse renovation furniture for some structural renovations. That's funny, that was cheaper, $1,250. Went to the specific GL account. Is this where we budgeted for? If so, sweet. Beautiful. Invoice is great. Let's approve it. Keep moving forward. We're going to click approve at the top of the screen. You're done. I did have a question the last time I hosted this webinar. We do require for many contracts that our vendor sends in a lien release with their CapEx invoice. And what if that's not included here on the left-hand side of the screen? Can accounting still get it paid? If it's not included here, you have really two different options. You could reject this invoice, but what that does is it puts it all the way back at the beginning, sends it back to the AM or PM on site. They have to void this invoice out. They have to reach out to the vendor, get them to resubmit it to Nexus all as one invoice. Nexus rescans it. It takes a while, right? It does, if you're starting back from the beginning. Or if you happen to have that lien release or you obtain it from the vendor, you can upload it yourself using this Manage Images button at the top of the screen. This will let you upload additional documents to this invoice so that it's still associated with the invoice, it's still attached, but you're not having to kick everything back to the start to start over. All right, I've talked about rejection a few times. Let's see how that works in application here. Again, invoices to approve. Let's go ahead and grab this next one here, valet waste. Well, right off the bat, I see that my invoice totals $1,000. It's a little low. Is that one of our RSM CapEx projects? And it looks like, you know what, on-site, they might have just made a mistake. This invoice was to trash out an apartment, and it's a rehab code. Is that something that you're part of? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the contracts, depends on the property, depends on so many extra things. If not, though, if something came to you inadvertently, if this is not truly your invoice, you have to reject it. And what this does, again, sends it back to the original person who was processing it. Same if the description's wrong and we need to correct it. Same if the GL account is wrong and we need to correct it. Same if our line items altogether are wrong or the invoice total is incorrect or the invoice is not what you and the vendor agreed upon. Those are all reasons to reject an invoice. You'll see the reject button up at the top of the screen, at which point you will be prompted to do two things. You will be asked to pick a general reason, maybe not an RSM project, remove the pay by field, and enter notes. Once you click save, that's it. You're done. Bada boom, bada bing. You're taken back to your dashboard, your home screen. If you really want to follow up and stalk that invoice a little bit, you'll find it now under this Rejected Invoices tab over on the right-hand side. You can't do anything with these, but you can just look at them and say, hey, that was rejected. The property hasn't done anything with it yet. Cool. So just to recap, Some things to remember in your approval role within Nexus. We never want to approve invoices without images, right? They should always have the picture of the invoice on the left. If you don't reject it, the next person will. Purchase orders are not needed. Honestly, if they put a purchase order with it, it probably won't get to you anyway, but if you see it, reject it. Rejected items, they go back to the beginning. It overrides all approval that's happened thus far, and it essentially states this invoice needs to be modified and resubmitted to everybody. Now, I'm not going to get too far into the unit upgrade discussion because it varies so much by property or state or region. Some of them are 776 codes, some are 920, some are 150, some are your projects, some are not your projects, some are draws. Moral of the story is unit upgrade or anything else that is not part of your operation capital projects, reject it. Now, some great tips. Remember, if you don't approve these invoices, they don't get paid. So it is important that you do set up those email notifications so that you will get a ping whenever there's an invoice that requires payment. And it's important to set up Nexus on your mobile device. There's a name. You'll email Jessie Erdman. Oh, can't draw a straight line. Wait for it, wait for it. Okay, that was close. You'll email her your phone number and your desired mobile PIN in order to get that set up. That is what makes your approval role in Nexus successful, because then you know when something needs to be approved, you can jump in on your phone and get it done. It's not going to hold up any processes. All right. I want to talk about a few reporting and research features that you have. Even though you can't change invoices, for example, you can still look at them all. So let's say your vendor calls you and they're like, hey, I'm a little nervous. I thought I sent this in. I haven't gotten my check. What's going on? You can use an invoice register. We'll go through this together. Pick whichever property you're looking for and use a search function to really instantly narrow down and look for that specific invoice. So let's go do that. In Nexus, our invoice register is at the top of the screen. We'll just select it here. And you'll notice in this register, you have a search button. Yes, you can also get it by going to invoices and search invoices. Same thing. This allows you to narrow down results by a number of filter criteria. You can look for only paid invoices. You can look for invoices in all types of statuses. I like to just leave it open. Let's cast our net wide, right? You can search by vendor ID, by invoice number. You can also add caveats to that. Maybe I only want to see one specific line item or one specific GL or things within a specific dollar amount range. You can have a lot of filters on this. So maybe I want to follow up with that Hyde Electric invoice that we just worked on, right? I could find it here by typing in Hyde. You can do begins with that word or contains that word. Click go. And you'll see all the invoices for this vendor at this property at the bottom of your screen. You'll see the dates, the invoice numbers. You can pick the vendor name to drill down to that invoice. You'll see the amounts and, importantly, the status. So if the vendor's like, hey, where's my $8,500 check? Oh, it looks like it's still pending approval, either from the RM, from Terra Arena, from the accountant, etc. Maybe they're like, hey, what happened to number 14SK100915? It looks like that one was voided, meaning it was taken out of the system. It will not be paid. Do they need to resubmit it? You can always drill down to the invoice to get more information. Again, just click the name of the vendor. You'll see the history log of this invoice. You'll see the information, the image of it, all the good stuff. And If you really want to drill down this much, you can. You can go, hey, looks like this invoice was voided. Why? Let's click on details, and you can get all the information of why. You have a really powerful research tool at your hands by using your search invoices function. Now, what if you're looking for more reporting type features instead of research type features? You also have an invoice register report. And this will let you drill down to the RSM CapEx filter, that pay by that triggers your capital expenditure workflow for operations expenses. And you can see reports that way too. Your invoice register report is found at the top of your screen under reports, and hey, invoice register report, so cleverly named. There's a lot of different report types to work with. There's date filters, vendor filters, status filters, who was approved by filters. You have a lot of different information to really customize these reports to show exactly what you want. You can even show them online or export it to Excel if you need to for any of your reporting. For more information about what types of reports are available and which ones are a little bit more specific to you instead of just specific to, gosh, the whole property and you're seeing a ton of information, take a look at that Nexus user guide for you guys. There's a Mission Rock Nexus policy guide, and again, this help button for manuals in Nexus. My favorite by far is this Introduction to Reporting manual. It'll get you a lot of information about what all of these filters mean. All right, let's bring it home. How do you make it successful? How is the best way, what are the best tips for your life in Nexus to be an easy one? Set up your mobile app. Enable your email notifications. And start thinking now, what's the best way to communicate with my teams? They need to know what invoices to expect so that they can market the right way. What is truly your CapEx project? Remember, they're processing 100% of invoices for their property, right? They see a lot of information. They also have 3 different versions of CapEx variations to work through. How do they know what's yours? It depends on that communication with you. Do you send them a list? Do you just shoot them an email? Say, hey, we have decided to move forward with your pool renovation project. You can start expecting to see invoices from XYZ vendor. Mark them for me. Okay, thanks, bye. Whatever works best for you and your teams, just make sure that communication exists. What if you need help with Nexus? You've got some great resources available to you. Rena Ashley and Tara Vaughn, those are your capital administrators, right? They're so helpful for invoice questions. Again, all draws and business plans still outside of Nexus. You will still process those with them the same way. What if you need admin support? If you need your login, if you have questions about error messages or something like that, use Mission Rock's Web Help Desk. That's how you get something corrected. You'll go to that Computer Systems tab and pick Nexus. I am also available. While I might not be an expert in all types of capital invoices, I do understand how all of our properties utilize Nexus, what your role looks like in Nexus, and what a lot of the features and functions do. The quickest way to get to me is through the help desk by picking training as your request type in the Nexus. You're more than welcome to call or email me also, but being in training, I'm kind of in and out a lot during the day. So whatever works best, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Jesse Erdman, also an excellent resource for you as well. With that, we are done. If you have any questions, you know where to send them. We've got a lot of help available to you. Hope you enjoyed the webinar and have honey bunches of fun in Nexus. Thank you so much.